Hello, I am Ellen Steger, President of the League of Women Voters of Richardson. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that never supports or opposes any candidate or political party. If you are interested in joining or donating to the League of Women Voters of Richardson, visit our website, LWV-Richardson.org. Membership is open to women and men of all ages. This forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Richardson for candidates running for City of Richardson City Council Place 6. All registered voters living in Richardson, whether in Dallas County or in Collin County, may vote in this election. There is no geographical requirement that the candidates must live within Place 6. This forum was recorded via Zoom during the first week in April without an audience. More voter information may be found online at vote411.org and our website, LWV-Richardson.org. Printed voters guides are now available. See our website for locations. Before we begin, I need to review the format for this forum. All candidates have agreed to abide by some basic ground rules, and I, as moderator, have agreed to ensure that the ground rules are followed. The candidates will discuss their own position on issues and not dwell on opponent's position or record, will refrain from personal attacks or charges, will answer the question that was asked, and will respect the time limits. The candidates will have 1.5 minutes to introduce themselves, 1.5 minutes to answer each question, and 2 minutes for a closing statement. Candidates will rotate going first. The public was polled to supply questions for this forum. Requests were made on social media and on the Richardson League's website, as well as through emails. Many thanks to those who submitted questions. However, due to the number of questions submitted and the time limits of this forum, we are not able to ask all questions submitted. Questions have been screened according to the League of Women Voters of Texas Guide to Candidate Forums. The candidates have no prior knowledge of these questions. The timekeeper for the evening is from the League of Women Voters of Richardson and will be visible on the video at all times. The timekeeper will signal with a green sign when 30 seconds remain, with a yellow sign when 10 seconds remain, and with a red stop sign when time for answering the questions has expired. Candidates, can you see the timekeeper?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
I couldn't see the timekeeper. Sorry about that. Okay, got you.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. The candidates have 1.5 minutes to introduce themselves. Introductions will be in ballot order. Daniel Burdett, as you are in ballot position 1, you have 1.5 minutes to introduce yourself.
Great, thank you very much. And thanks for offering us this opportunity to speak directly to the voters. I'm Daniel Burdett. I'm running for City Council Place 6. I've lived in Richardson for 20 years now, my first decade in the Duck Creek neighborhood. And for the last decade, I've lived on Shadywood Lane in the Cottonwood Heights neighborhood. But we love the amenities and services that our city provides and want to play a part in keeping the city a great place to live and work. My service and leadership training really began in my days in the Corps Cadets at Texas A&M, where I played trumpet in the Aggie Band and served as the executive officer for my outfit. I continued once moving to Richardson with service through First United Methodist Church, where I served in the chancel choir president and served on the church council and multiple other committees. Within the city, I volunteered for a decade with the Wildflower Arts and Music Festival and have served on the executive steering committee for that festival for the past 6 years. I'm a member of the Leadership Richardson Class 28 and served on the LR Alumni Association Board of Directors, most recently as its president. In 2015, the City Council appointed me to be a Parks Commissioner, which has taught me a lot about the city, visiting all 38 parks in the city and recreation facilities and miles of trails. I've been attending City Council meetings, goal-setting sessions, and budget planning meetings for years, and know the time commitment that I'm stepping up for now. So I hope to serve you as your next City Council member for Place 6 and would appreciate your vote on May 1st. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn Frederick, you have 1.5 minutes to introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you. Over 40 years ago, we moved to Richardson. We moved there mainly because we heard the schools were good. Our kids attended Jess Harbin, Liberty, and Berkner. our daughter became a fabulous school teacher, thanks in large part, I think, to the teachers she had in RISD. While living in College Park, I volunteered to be the fundraiser for the PTA. One of the things we did that year, accomplishments, was the parents and one consultant in one day laid out a 64 station sprinkler system that took care of the cracked playgrounds that was injuring our children. It was a fabulous day, and it was a great joy to watch the sprinklers come up at 4 o'clock that Saturday afternoon. I continued to do volunteer work in neighborhoods in Canyon Creek, where I was beautification chair. Oops, I'm losing my time. I will say this, I was on the planning commission for 10 years, 2 meetings a month for 10 years. I actually visited lots of sites. And so with that experience, I would use this to be on the council. I'm a great listener and a problem solver. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Arifin Shamsul, you have 1.5 minutes to introduce yourself.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Arifin Shamsul, and I'm running for Richardson City Council Place 6. I have a bachelor and master's degree in civil engineering. 29 years ago, I came to America as a student with no family and little money. Now I have a wonderful family, and also I proudly own and operate my own civil engineering consulting firm, specializing in municipal infrastructure. Giving back to the community is very important. Since moving to Richardson 15 years ago, I took every single opportunity to serve our beautiful city and wonderful community. I served on the city zoning board and building commission almost 10 years. And I am graduate of Leadership Richardson class 25, Citizen Police Academy class 41. My promises to you that I will work hard for you. I'll make the best decision, and the most important thing, I'll be listening to you, and not just listen to you just to listen. I'll be listening to you to understand, and I want to be your voice at the city hall. And please vote for Arifin Shamsul, Richardson City Council Place 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll start the questions. Each of you has 1.5 minutes to answer each question. And question number 1, we'll start with Ms. Frederick. What do you see as Richardson's biggest strength, and how should Richardson leverage it? You have 1.5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Well, I believe our biggest strength is the leadership of the past, and also how the citizens have come together and always seem to come together to make our city an appealing place to live. It's when I sell real estate and I bring them here, there's just that joy and understanding from when you talk with people who live in Richardson, how proud they are of the city services and what the city does for them, and how the city does listen to the citizens. So it's an easy win-win.
Thank you. And Mr. Shamsul, you have 1.5 minutes.
Okay, wonderful. It's a good question. And our greatest, the strength that you are saying, that this is our diversity is the most greatest strength that city has. And of course, that based on that, we can bring many people together. And our previous leaders, they have made some decision for the future, and it was all the decision like that was made collectively. We are getting the fruit of those. So I think I would say that our diversity is our most valuable asset.
Thank you. And Mr. Burdett, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. This is a hard question because Richardson has so many strengths. It's hard to identify one that we feel is the strongest. But one that's specifically attractive to me is the community that we build through our park systems and our amenities that are around the city. And maybe I'm slightly biased in on the Parks Commission, but events like the Wildflower Arts and Music Festival and the Cottonwood Heights and the Huffines art shows, and there are just so many ways to not only get people out of their homes and into the parks, and there's a park within a 10-minute walk of every single house in the city of Richardson. Not many cities around the state or country can claim that, but it is something that Richardson has, and I'm very proud of. There are trails that connect us all throughout the city, and bike lanes. So there's so many great amenities that really give the citizens an opportunity to get out and meet their neighbors and spend time outdoors and have a good time together. So that's one that I would say is one of our strongest aspects. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, Mr. Shamsel, you will go first. What should Richardson do, if anything, to support local businesses impacted by the pandemic? And please elaborate.
That's one of the toughest questions because what should have done? We have not really done much to support the local small businesses. And that was, I was hoping that something would be coming from our leadership. And now that's very challenging. I mean, I really don't have much, because I think because it's a complex situation, it was difficult for the city council to do anything. We need to think about a little more on this one and come up with some idea what we can do. Other than that, I think this is a very difficult question. I'll just leave that we have not done much at all.
Thank you. And Mr. Burdett, you have 1.5 minutes.
Yeah, this is a tough one, and the businesses of all sizes have been impacted, unfortunately, and I think one thing the city itself could do is perhaps have lenience on fees or permitting fees and things like that as businesses are trying to come back and maybe are behind on their bills for water or for services that the city provides. But collectively as citizens, I think personally, Catherine and I have been trying to patronize our favorite restaurants and establishing certain small shops around town, really to try to personally invest in and try to keep our friends and neighbors afloat throughout the pandemic. So I think it's really not necessarily something that the government should be responsible for, something we collectively should take ownership and responsibility to help our friends and neighbors who are struggling.
Thank you. And Ms. Frederick, you have 1.5 minutes.
I agree with both of my opponents. I think that we are in a situation where we need to encourage our friends and neighbors all to go out and patronize our businesses. Don't go to Plano. Don't go to Frisco to eat dinner. Eat dinner, buy your stuff from Home Depot in Richardson or Lowe's, Target, the same thing. I always try to do, where am I going to go? I'm going to go to a business in Richardson. And because I tend to drive everywhere for my job, I really patronize all over Richardson. I go to the Shire, I go to West, I go to East, I go to South. It's just one of those things that you have to consciously decide that you want to buy in Richardson.
Thank you. Mr. Burdett, you'll be first on this next question. Cities throughout the region have different community standards concerning code enforcement. Do you believe that Richardson is too lenient, too strict, or doing things right in regard to code enforcement? Please explain.
Code enforcement.
I think we're doing striking a pretty good balance, just in my personal observation. Of course, I've, like many of our neighbors, have occasionally gotten a letter from the city about the weeds being too tall on the alleyway or something, but that proper enforcement does lend itself to having a beautiful city. And I think you can tell as you drive into Richardson that you are entering Richardson. The standards of the medians and the homes and the upkeep of and not only homes but businesses. So as we've had some areas start to decline, I'm glad to see some of the revitalization that's happening, but code enforcement plays a part in that and making sure that we have a an attractive city that's not only attractive to residents to move here, but businesses to come and open their shops here. So, yeah, code enforcement has a role to play, and I think we strike a pretty good balance with not being too strict and not being too lenient. Thank you.
And Ms. Frederick, you have a minute and a half.
Okay, I'm a stickler on this one. I see all kinds of situations that could possibly be a little bit better in residential areas especially, but I do believe with code enforcement also needs to come kindness. I really feel like an understanding, because right now there may be times when people for some reason financially or whatever don't have a lawnmower, or they don't have the finances to get that trim repaired on their house. I think we may need to reach out a little bit more to the services in the city that do help people when they are in need. I know it's mainly for seniors, but it also could be for our 50-year-old neighbors or our 25-year-old neighbors that lost their job. I do think there's compassion that needs to go along with code, and I would love to see just a little bit more of that. I do believe we practice it pretty well, but it doesn't hurt, and possibly reaching out to the church groups to have them help as well might be a nice way to continue to make good neighbors.
Thank you. And Mr. Shamsel, you have a minute and a half.
Okay, that's great. It's a good question. Yes, I think the codes are there to enforce. I think our city staffs are doing a good job, and especially the city is the old city. Those are very important. So it's not just basic lawnmower things and other things, but also there are other stuff that I think our staff can go through some training, additional training, especially when it comes to new technology, new green stuff that is coming for new development. So if that way, our staff can apply those codes a little more easily. But I think overall, I think we are good, and it's very important to follow the code as strict as possible. But of course, we can work with other organizations to make our citizens' life easy, but not give up the code. Thank you.
Thank you. For the next question, Ms. Frederick, you will be first. The city does not currently take any federal dollars through community development block grants, leaving a lot of money on the table. Do you believe the city should pursue these grants? Yes or no, and why?
Thank you. I would love to see, yes, I think we ought to consider them, depending on what strings might be attached to that. I just really need to think that we need to look at all avenues of funding for areas that would help eliminate or alleviate a little bit of the tax burden on the property owners.
Thank you. And Mr. Shamsel, you have a minute and a half.
That's another good question and very tricky question. When it comes to money, yes, we feel like that we need to get that money, but we have to think about that. We have to see our long-term vision, how that's impact our life and the future generation, our city, financially also. So, of course, we have to look at that, how, what kind of condition comes with that. And if it balances both way and it does not have any impact on our long-term planning and vision of the city, yes, I would be definitely looking for those funds. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Burdette, you have a minute and a half.
I think we're fairly well in alignment on this. It is a tricky subject, and always hate to pass up dollars that are available, but we do need to take careful consideration of what stipulations come with that, and whether it requires more bureaucracy of a housing authority to be defined that we don't currently have, or certainly worth looking into and listening to what's involved and how the impact would be, as Mr. Shamsel has said, that we don't want to just take money because it's available and then find that the long-term impact down the road is not beneficial to the city. But certainly, I don't claim to know everything, so I am definitely open to listening and understanding what is involved with that and what the pros and cons could be to that type of approach.
Thank you. Mr. Shamsel, you'll be first on this next question. Much has been discussed about affordable housing in our region. What role do you believe the city should play in ensuring the availability of affordable housing to all income levels? You have a minute and a half.
That's another touchy and tricky question. City, Richardson, we are landlocked. We don't have that much land left for development, and we have to look our long-term vision plan, and we need to make a room for housing for all income level. And city definitely can look at the land, use planning, utilization, that what's the best way to use those land. And that's, without city's input and involvement, this is not going to happen. So I would be looking at, all the options that is best for our city long term, and find a way to accommodate, young, older generation, all kind of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burdett, you have a minute and a half.
Yeah, this one I feel is tied to the last question of affordable housing. Is a even how do you define affordable is the first question. But I'm sure Ms. Frederick can tell us the stock of housing in the city is fairly diverse, and there are houses at many different price points within the city, and supply and demand generally dictates the pricing, and so there's much demand. That's creating such a great city makes a lot of people want to live here. So the demand is high, and the supply is, as Mr. Shamsel mentioned, we don't have a lot of places to build new stock. So for those places that we have, if it is something that we could provide something that's potentially smaller and more affordable for certain price point ranges, that could be something we look into. But the only other option is accepting those federal and state dollars, which again kind of ties back to wanting to make sure that we understand all the hooks that go with that if we were to accept that.
Thank you. And Ms. Frederick, you have a minute and a half.
Affordable housing is a hard word to swallow and understand both. I think the biggest the answer to the question is going to be density. I think we've got to go vertical, and because we have a little space, but new has to be vertical. If we get some more housing stock that is vertical, then that will help eliminate some of the supply and demand issues that are right now. I really do believe that, I know I'm not saying this right, and I live this every single day, but that will help us get, I wish I could think of the words right this minute, because I want to talk so much about this. I really do believe that will help with the density, with not having the supply of inventory that we need. I really do. I can talk for an hour on this subject, but just not right in 1.5 minutes. Sorry about that.
Mr. Burdett, you will be first on this next question. The Richardson ISD recently changed from an election system where all 7 trustees were elected at large to a system where only 2 trustees are elected at large. The remaining 5 trustees are now elected in single-member districts. Do you believe that the city should change to a similar system where at least some of the city council members are elected in single-member districts? Please elaborate. Mr. Burdett, you have a minute and a half.
Thank you. I don't see the need for that right now, to be honest. And I think the system that the city has in place right now, where places 1, 2, 3, and 4 do require that the candidate live in a certain district, helps us to make sure that we still have representation from each district on the council. But it doesn't stipulate that only certain people can vote for those. So all citizens vote for all 7 positions. So all citizens in the city have a say, which I think is also helpful to keep all council members accountable to the entire population. So we don't have members that are only focused on their neighborhoods or the neighborhoods that are in their district. So I'm a fan of the way that the system is set up in Richardson City Council right now, personally. But no need for change. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Frederick, you have a minute and a half.
Okay, I tend to agree with Daniel. I do think that if you went to single member districts, first of all, the district itself would look probably gerrymandering in order to be able to try to make it equal. So I really think that the way Richardson has it right now, where everybody votes for every place, is really a fair way to be.
Thank you. And Mr. Shamsel, you have a minute and a half.
Okay, that's another great question. RISD, what they did, I think it was appropriate for them because of many reasons. But for city, that we have the 7 place, 1 mayor and 6 council members. For us, I think this is okay as today because we are a smaller city. So dividing district and strictly staying with those districts by those councilmen, it will divide us more. So I'm not here, I'm not in support of dividing a small community. So yes, I think that what we have right now is good, but our city is a very diverse city. So eventually, I think that our citizens are understanding more and including different diverse group to the city council, city boards and commission. So we can achieve those things without dividing the district strictly. So, and I think that's in the process, and hopefully there will be more individual coming forward and volunteering and make this city, more diverse in every level. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Frederick, you will begin first with the next question. What role should local city council members take in trying to influence state legislation? And please elaborate.
I think we should have an active role lobbying our legislators. I'm not sure that the legislators get the clear message. I know that right now they don't seem to understand sometimes with their laws, their new laws, that Richardson is not Frisco. Our tax base is at a certain point, and we don't have much flexibility to ever increase that tax base based on residential property taxes values. So I'm really concerned that our representatives in Austin don't really get the big picture of Richardson like they should.
Thank you. And Mr. Shamsel, you have a minute and a half.
Oh, that's a even much bigger question. I think the city council need to get involved and educating the legislature that what we are looking for, because not every level of citizen gonna have time to get involved and pressure them to what they need. I think they understand. The Austin does understand certain level. I would not say that they don't understand anything. But again, the law or legislation that comes, it's not just one legislation fits all. So every community, every city is different. Sometimes some restriction is good, sometimes they are not. So we just have to see, what best and try to work together. I think the city council members, they need to get involved with their representative to come up with the right legislation for everyone.
Thank you. And Mr. Burdette, a minute and a half.
I do think the role of local council members should be, to communicate on behalf of our residents the concerns that we have with the county and state officials to make sure that the voice of the citizens is being heard at the state level. We need to make sure our voice is clear on where certain layers of control should lie, certain things that the state should be controlling other things that we think should be better or are better controlled at the more local level. So certainly not an adversarial conversation, but a more of a collaborative conversation to make sure that our county and state representatives are understanding the needs and values and the desires of the residents of Richardson.
Thank you. Mr. Shamsel, you'll be first on this next question. What suggestions do you have for engaging more citizens in local government and including those groups that have not previously been involved? You have a minute and a half.
That's another long way, needed question that need to be answered. This is something that my unique background coming from zero to something existence. So I understand how difficult that life is. So we need to be proactively doing it, reaching out, making opening the door for everyone. But how do you open the door? So people don't even understand where the door are. So this is my involvement with the city council, getting elected and working for those for the whole city. I think that will encourage the other group to get involved with the city volunteers, other work, because everybody is busy with their life, trying to stabilize themselves and making sure their family, they raise the family correctly and prepare them for the future. But they're missing the one big important part, that the city life, that involving with the city government, and this is their home. So I think these are the way that electing some more people from different groups into board and commission, also qualified people in the city council, will make a big difference.
Thank you. And Mr. Burdette, you have a minute and a half.
Thank you. So, speaking from personal experience, my interest in understanding and getting involved in city government came through the Leadership-Richardson program, which of course is run by the Chamber of Commerce. I think that program is very valuable, and I think the program is actively and intentionally trying to reach out to different neighborhoods and segments of the city and populations in the city to help inspire them to also to get involved. That of course there's a cost to Leadership-Richardson, but the city itself has a number of programs as well that do not have a cost and are actively inviting neighbors from all communities within the city. So the CARES program and the Citizens Police Academy and Fire Academy are great examples of opportunities for citizens that are available and at no cost to them to come in and learn about their city and the way the government functions and what the responsibilities of the different layers of the government are. So, and then of course as council, making selections and appointments to the boards and commissions certainly is an opportunity to outreach and intentionally try to bring on board qualified candidates from lots of different neighborhoods and backgrounds. So I think that's a great way to start. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Frederick, you have a minute and a half.
Okay. I think one of the things to be able to reach out to somebody is to ask them, invite them, get them to just come and be your guest. If you're on a panel or you're on a program that, or an HOA, we've got to just constantly reach out and invite people to come and become involved. I think that's the biggest thing. And I'm a big proponent of LR. I'm from class 17, ancient history days. But I really believe that getting out a little bit more in our HOAs, we seem to have the HOA presidents meetings, but I think we need to maybe expand that a little bit and have 4 or 5 people from each HOA become more of a committee to look at all the programs in the area and see where we can possibly recruit, if you will, for more volunteers. I think once you get the volunteers and get them involved a little bit more, they will embrace it a lot easier. So
Thank you. For the next question, Mr. Burdette, you will go first. Of the possible options for the fate of the Civic Center, which option do you support and why?
this was a tough one. You know, the Civic Center, of course, today is adjoined to the City Hall, and I am leaning with where the council seems to be leaning at the moment, which is to no longer host the Civic Center in that facility, and to expand the City Hall office space and into that existing space today, as has been discussed by current council, as I've either attended or reviewed all of those meetings. There may be an option at a later date to open a Catalyst facility in the Innovation Quarter, for example. But there, in today's city, we have lots of other space for and opportunities for organizations to hold large gatherings at our full-service hotels, at our houses of worship, even some private event spaces. That there are other places that, as was disclosed in some of those council meetings, the Civic Center function was fairly underutilized, and of course does have a constant expense if you are operating a dedicated space specifically for that. So I'm in line with, I think they were describing it as option 3, which is to discontinue Civic Center function at this time.
Thank you. And Ms. Frederick, you have a minute and a half.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Mr. Burdette. I think option 3 gives more flexibility to down the road, and I could definitely see where that could be a winning option for our city. I just really think that's the way to go.
Thank you. And Mr. Shamsel, you have a minute and a half.
This is probably one of the most important questions that we need to look ourselves. We should not be imposing our will without public input. This is one of the things that would be our next 30 years, 40 years. I don't know how long we're going to be facing this. So yes, I know that there was multiple meetings was held at the city council, but not enough discussion outside city hall. So civic center was built, from the public money, and something that we paid for it. Our previous generation paid for it. So taking that down without the discussion is not really fair. So I think there were 3 options was discussed. Adding another building behind the city hall and expanding there. So there was multiple things. I think those are all good options. Need to be discussed. I think end of the day, this might be the decision by the city, our citizen, that okay, we don't want this civic center anymore. But I think this is very important thing that we need to engage our citizen as soon as possible, little more to come up with a good decision.
Thank you. Ms. Frederick, you'll be going first on this next question. What budget items would you change and why? And what effect would these changes have? You have a minute and a half.
Well, that's a very tough question. They're all tough questions, by the way. I don't know that I would change any of the budget items. I would just simply, just as we do in a practice in our personal life, we just have to trim it down a little bit more, take absolutely all the fat out, if there is any fat in the budget, out, and just do the absolute necessary things till we can get through and figure out when we can start having local control back in our hands so that we can handle how to really balance our budget and also continue to provide all the services that our citizens are accustomed to, plus also making sure that we support our police and fire. Public safety is number one, in my opinion, as something that citizens will demand and expect.
Thank you. And Mr. Shamsel, you have a minute and a half.
That's a great question. And the previous question and this question, I think those are both interrelated. Now, by looking at just going through the budget item, you can see that, oh my gosh, there are, some of the places that we're losing so much money. But remember that city government is not here to make money. So there are many services that we're going to have there are some services we will be losing money, but there are some services it will balance, and some other places it will make money. So, parks and trail, those are things that we have to provide. Those does not bring money immediately, but it provides the environment to have other kind of business, other jobs created. So it brings money indirectly. Similar thing for the Eisman Center. If you look at the money, we lost $2 million there. So do you cut down that budget because of that just for 1 year? Probably not. Similar thing, Civic Center that should be shut down because we are losing few $1,000 there. So these are the things that we need to see, that what are the long-term benefits coming from those places. But we have to manage those things a little more carefully so that we don't lose that much. So we don't have to maintain too much by putting too much money every year. So I think otherwise, I think we're doing great.
And Mr. Burdette, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. We are. I think the city does manage our budget well right now, and I've attended one of the budget planning sessions a couple of years ago, and came to learn that we operate under what's called a zero-based budget. So we don't just copy over last year's numbers and add X%. We really go program by program and make a justification for the dollars that are being spent on that program. Certainly, we've had to make some hard decisions in the last year with revenues going down, and planning for the future, knowing that revenues growth is going to be capped now by some state regulations. So I think we do spend wisely, and we manage our debt wisely, which affords us our AAA rating that was announced yesterday. We've achieved again from both S&P and Moody's. So I think the budget process is working pretty well right now, and it is a collaboration between the city staff and the council, who are kind of setting the vision and the goals, overall objectives. So at the moment, I think there's not a huge need for change.
Thank you. And this is the last question. And Mr. Shamsel, you will go first. A lot of talk centers around privatizing certain city functions that supposedly could be done better in the private sector. Is there any function that you would consider privatizing that could possibly be accomplished more effectively in the private sector? And please explain.
Oh, that's a great question. Where do we draw the boundary? Because there are something that city can do, but there are certain things definitely the private sector can do better. Private sector, when you open up a business, the business for profit is private sector, but that's non-profit. That's the business that is not going to be profitable. Even if it is a break even, they are not interested to run those things. So we can do a few things like the event center, the civic center things. That's something that I think, as a small city, having those services are good things, but we could probably look at that thing with the private sector, including the Eisman Center. It seems that that we could probably look at this, and at least the discussion need to be there if it is not already there. That what are the best way we can manage those activity, but to see that you can, because there is a high demand for those kind of places for the private events. So I would look definitely openly, see where we can do this thing more.
Thank you. And Mr. Burdette, 1.5 minutes.
Yeah, again, I think this is something that it always requires some balance. And I know of a few programs, being on the Parks Commission for a number of years, where the Parks Department made a decision to hire vendors for some of the parks maintenance or the median maintenance or things like that. On other occasions, it did make more sense to have the city staff do that and maybe even save some money that route. So I think, I wouldn't say that there's any one sweeping location or department that should be considered for, privatizing instead of the city doing it. But there's plenty of room for also for partnerships, with I love the partnership we're seeing with the Network of Community Ministry to be able to serve a lot of our citizens that are in need, that the city is joining, that are kind of stepping alongside them to bolster their offerings and really provide an amenity to the city, but it's not on on the shoulders of the city. So there are lots of opportunities for partnerships and of that nature that I think really kind of make this a great place. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Frederick, a minute and a half.
Okay. Mr. Burnett made a great analogy and talking about stepping alongside of the city in order to not exactly carry the burden, shoulder the burden, but take some of the financial burden off of the city and off of citizens. So I guess I would have to say that I would want to explore even further the idea of where we could possibly cut funds, cut expenses without eliminating the wonderful benefits that we get from whatever it is, such as the Eisman, and he mentioned the parks, and I thought of that one as well. I remember when I was on the Parks Commission, we had to bring up the idea of actually charging the citizens for using the rec center. It was something that hadn't been done till then. And so, you know, those are all growing steps, growing into a different financial responsibility that I think we're going to have to continue to look at a lot of different avenues for the future.
Thank you. That was the last question. Thanks to all of you, and this has been very informative. For closing statements, we will begin in reverse ballot order, which means that Mr. Shamsel, you will begin, and you have 2 minutes for a closing statement.
Thank you again. So 29 years ago, as I mentioned, that I came to America as a student. And my first job, I earned just $4.25 an hour. And it was very difficult time for me. And I did manage my life to go without any credit card debt and manage my budget very carefully. And eventually I have my own business and a wonderful family. So it took really lots of hard work to achieve that things. And I will work just hard as much I did for my own life, for our city. So I'll be very careful, you know, how do we spend the money for our, you know, for different programs. And I do understand that the importance of having so many events that does not make money, but those brings money indirectly from different business, other activity. So, and that attracts some other businesses, which includes the Eisman Center and having some great parks and trails. And that also, you know, having a good, and you know, police department is very important. And most importantly, I see that the infrastructure is something that we need to focus next few years. Even though our budget has went up this year, you know, the proposing bond has, you know, bigger number. But remember that the construction cost has gone up so much, so it's not really much. You know, 5 years ago it would be $50 million, probably now $100 million. So we're not getting much. So we need to focus next 20 years, not just 5 years, on our infrastructure to, you know, to make sure that we don't get a sudden tax hike because of this. So this is very important. So with all this, my promise, I'll be working really hard for you and make good decisions. Thank you. Vote for Arifin Shamsul, place 6.
Thank you. And Ms. Frederick, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, in closing, I want to thank the League of Women Voters who patiently instructed us on this day. We all want our messages to be carried out to the citizen, and we sincerely thank you for your hard work. Secondly, I'd just like to restate that I have been volunteering for 15 years in the city, both on Planning Commission and as well as on Parks Commission. And it's not about building my resume to run for political office, but it's because I love this city. This is all about the city of Richardson and its citizens, and not about me and what I might gain from this position. I know that being on city council is hard work, and I am really ready to give 100% of my time to listening and solving problems. Richardson has been very good to me, and I promise to earn your vote. I'm Marilyn Frederick, place 6, Richardson City Council. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you. Many thanks to the candidates for participating in our virtual forum.
We missed Daniel.
May
Oh,
I
I'm
give
sorry.
a closing remark?
Excuse me. Mr. Burdett, I am so sorry. You have 2 minutes.
Not a problem. Thank you very much. I do also want to echo thanks for this opportunity to speak with you and speak with the voters directly in Richardson. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it live, but this is the next best thing. So thank you for that. If elected to City Council, my priorities are what I refer to as the 4 I's, and we've discussed a number of those over the afternoon. Infrastructure is an ongoing need that we're in a city as old as Richardson, so we must continue to support to maintenance and modernization of our streets, alleys, and sidewalks. Innovation is also key to really keeping Richardson as part of the history of Richardson. I hope that it's part of the future. It speaks to me personally as an innovator. I hold 2 U.S. patents and love the spirit of innovation that is coming to the city. Involvement, we've touched on earlier, making sure our citizens get involved, that really adds to the value of the city and makes it a collectively a better place to live. And of course, inclusion, as has been mentioned, Richardson is a very diverse city in many aspects, age, race, religion. I want to really make sure that we're making Richardson a place that all can call home, or proud to call home. But as described earlier, I have been trying to find ways to get more and more involved and give back. Catherine and I have a family motto. It's work hard, play hard, and give back. And that's the way we like to live our lives. And I would love to hear from the residents and represent the residents of Richardson as your next city council member. Daniel Burdett will be the first name on the ballot on Place 6, and I would really appreciate your vote and look forward to working for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I do apologize. But many thanks to all 3 of you for participating in our virtual forum. Early voting in person begins Monday, April 19th, and continues through Tuesday, April 27th. You must have already registered in order to vote in the May 1st joint election. The deadline was April 1st. Make sure you exercise your right to vote, and thank you for watching.